Okay, so we just got back from watching Avengers Infinity War.
Yep.
Who wants to start us off? Anything. Throw a point out there.
Amazing.
We'll
start with that.
It's not really a point, but if you elaborate on it, it will become a point.
So it's always tough with a movie like this where there's so many heroes. How do you focus? How do you keep track of them all? And I think that by splitting them up into their groups and the way they divided the groups was really well done. It helped keep the pace of the movie. It was almost 3 hours and it really didn't feel like that. I never felt a drag.
2 hours and 20 minutes, dude.
Okay, well, that's still long.
Pretty close to 3 hours.
Rounding it would be 2, but yeah, that's close to 3.
2.5.
But if you round it up.
Yeah. Anyway, we're not going to get caught up on time, but I see what you're saying. The pacing was nice. The subdivides into smaller groups. Not only was it nice to help not lose focus on an ensemble movie like you were saying, but I think it also gave a nice variety of combinations that you don't normally see because, this is all the same Marvel Cinematic Universe, but you don't generally see the Guardians of the Galaxy interacting with, this guy or that guy, and I don't know how much to go into that's not considered spoilers. In
the trailer,
you see in the trailer, you see Thor's with the Guardians, right? And that created some nice opportunities for some character development, some comic relief moments that you normally wouldn't get. So the way that they did that subdivide, I thought was very nice for kind of just keeping that pacing and focus in the right places.
Yeah.
I really like how they sort of scattered around a bit of everything. There was a bit of humor here and there. There was a bit of action here and there. There was a bit of plot development here and there. They didn't really spend, other than, of course, the huge battle at the very end, which always happens in one of these movies. They didn't really spend, a huge amount of time just focusing on doing one thing. They let it sort of be broken up a bit.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate here, so either of you guys can answer. But as good as that formula is, do you find that now, 19th, 20th movie in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, do you think they're getting to the point where they're painting by the numbers?
I would say that, but with the way they decided to go with the plot with this one, even though, yes, the arc is still, similar to a lot of the hero's journey, I didn't feel like that.
It felt very much the way the plot went was quite different from the way the plot of almost every other superhero movie went, for various reasons, of course. But I also really liked how this movie drew from every other movie prior, which helped because it is a very long movie with a lot of content to cover. It really helped that there were all these other movies that had built up to it. And this is very much sort of like a conclusion point to a very long arc.
Well, I found some parts to be a little slow. I don't take that as a major negative because as much as we've had Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Iron Man 3, we've had sequels. This is kind of the first time that they're really going to be doing a direct continuation to a story, which, it's not really a surprise or a spoiler. We knew that going into it. So you figure, dividing a 2.5-hour movie into from a 5-hour movie, you expect this to be more that initial plot development part of it, but they still managed to keep it, again, a little bit lighter because you have 18 movies of origins and building up to the relationships and just kind of, hinting at this. But that being said, I found that there was also some issues with that because some things that took place seemed to be a little bit too convenient and happening all too quickly when you consider the span of the Marvel, cinematic universe. Thanos is after the stones. And how many movies have we seen his influence hinting, showing the stones, and all of a sudden he's just starting to collect them like nothing, right? They're just coming at him, right? I get that, right? Because even 5 hours is not enough time for all of those different stories, but it really felt very rushed at some points.
I think it might have helped a bit to have Thanos have a bit more presence in earlier movies, but at the same time, that also means that he's a surprise in this movie. He goes from being in the shadows to basically the forefront, obvious villain. Like,
and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just really felt like that for that exact reason. It felt really rushed.
Yeah. See, the way I perceived it, at least, was that he planned it out that he wanted to know where everything was first before making his move. And the other thing is that once he started to collect the stones, his power just increased and increased. Yeah. Especially when something like the Space Stone allows you to just, like, teleport anywhere. It allows a lot more things to happen in a shorter period of time.
Yeah, it did definitely seem like he had a snowball effect. Like, you could see how he was getting more and more powerful with every moment.
Can we touch on that powerful word for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Probably my one biggest complaint with this movie, and I was telling Alex in the theater, is this movie, more than many other Marvel movies, I found an inconsistency with characters' powers.
Okay.
Like, there's a battle early in the movie with Scarlet Witch and some children of Thanos, and she has difficulty. And then later in the movie, she's able to hold off Thanos, who's already collected some stones. Where was that power earlier?
Yeah.
Right? And there's other examples, but I'm trying to keep it vague and limited to spoilers, right?
Even if you go to the...
But you have parts where you have characters like Black Widow and, like the Wakandians who are able to fight these same children of Thanos who were a challenge for Vision and Scarlet Witch. Like, Scarlet Witch, one of the most powerful mutants, and Vision made of one of the stones. And yet there's these regular humans, the ones that have all the memes about them for not having powers or super suits, who are able to do as well, if not better.
I think that's kind of like a superhero staple, though, is that at the beginning of any movie, they suck, and then by the end of the movie, they're suddenly amazing.
Sometimes they get better. That's the thing.
It's right? The Dragon Ball Z thing. It's like, his power level got bigger.
Yeah. But the thing is, in those other movies, right? Like, you talk about the origin movies. Tony Stark got better because he built a suit. Steven Rogers got better because he got the super serum. None of these people got better, but all of a sudden their performances varied in different places. In fact, did better when their opponents were better. But they didn't get any better. They didn't do training. They didn't get any, okay, not all of them, some of them, but not, the ones that I'm referring to specifically didn't go and get new weaponry and new technology, and then all of a sudden they're faring better. And to me, again, it's not going to take away from the movie, but it was hard for me to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really have the whole training thing for everyone in a movie with, 20 different superheroes.
Yeah, but you can have situational, right? Situational advantages, elements of surprise, an environment, a technology, right? You don't necessarily need to get better. I was just pointing out the fact, again, trying to avoid spoilers, that people fared better against stronger opposition without improving. In fact, there was lesser heroes doing better. And again, not because of situational or external environmental influences. They just did better.
Yeah,
it was like, how?
It was the power of Captain America's appearance. He just shows up and he
makes everyone better.
He has an aura.
He rocks that beard.
He does.
Yeah,
Chris Evans needs to have that beard.
It was the beard of power. That's what it is. I don't
want to get too caught up on what, for me, I bring it up, but it is a smaller...
Well, it didn't happen all the time. It was a couple of characters.
I mean, it happened in enough larger points to me that it was like, okay, well, I mean, if these stronger heroes did better against this lesser opposition, it would have put a big halt on this fast-moving progression by the villains that I'm referring to.
It was mostly the Vision. We can just agree that the Vision kind of
Vision sucks.
Yeah, we can disagree
this whole
with that.
Movie revolves around the Infinity Gems or stones, whatever they're calling them in this one, right? And he's made of one of them, and he sucks. But you guys will have to see the movie to see how he sucks for yourselves, because I really can't go further into it without spoilers.
The thing with Vision is that
he sucks.
If you left him at full strength and allowed him to just unleash, he would just be so overpowered compared to, let's say, anybody but Thanos, Like, it would just be so ridiculous.
But you look, even like Doctor Strange is utilizing the power of one gem.
Yeah.
And he holds his own very well against the toughest of opposition. Vision is made from one of the stones and sucks against lackeys of the villains. But, again, don't want to go into spoilers. And again, it really isn't something that took away from my enjoyment of the movie. It was just one of those where it's like, it's hard to stop thinking about it when, you know, and I've harped on this before, superhero movies, you always expect the heroes in the end to come out on top. That's been happening in the comics, the TV shows, the movies forever. It's that suspension of disbelief of how are they going to overcome this. But in a movie like that, where it's just like, well, I mean, they could overcome it if they just stopped sucking for no reason at all. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on that. Any standout performances to you guys?
I really like Thanos.
Oh, I loved Thanos.
I thought he did.
Joining the Marvel Cinema, he's another person who's going to play multiple characters in the Marvel Cinema because he's going to be Cable coming up in Deadpool 2. We already have Chris Evans, Chad Bosworth, is it?
Chadwick Boseman.
Who else? Like, there's a bunch of them now, but he's joining that group of people. So is he going to be Deadpool, or he's going to be Cable later on? But he did a great job.
Yeah.
You know, the previous showings of Thanos, even in the smaller parts of like where he appeared, he really didn't do much for me. You know, I was like, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to do him justice. And they really did a very good job of not only doing him justice, but adding that level of emotion and conflict to him that you don't normally see from... Usually the villain is just like, you know, I'm going to destroy this or stop you. There's no regret. There's no remorse. And you can almost see, like, that element that he's doing something wrong, but in his mind he believes it to be right. And he's not 100% okay with... You know what I mean? Like,
the end justifies the means is really what he's going with.
He is one of the more multifaceted, multi-dimensioned villains they've made just because they've added those elements of feeling and remorse to his actions.
I was going to say, he is probably the most third-dimensional character, or villain, I should say, that we've had in the Marvel Universe.
He definitely had the best character development of anyone in this movie. And... yeah, it was really nice getting to see sort of his story, his
they
side of it.
humanized him, right? They made him relatable and sympathetic in a way.
And I like that so much more than just putting a villain in there that is just there to be beaten, to look evil, stuff like that. And at the same time, they also managed to make him such a massive threat. Like, he was clearly a threat the entire time. He had so much power. He was unstoppable. He was able to take on pretty much everyone he came across. At the same time, he was also not so powerful that he could just steamroll over everyone. Like, when they ganged up on him, yes, they had massive difficulty, but they were able to do things. They were able to get limited upper hands on him to show that he isn't just basically an unstoppable god force. And I really liked pretty much everything they did with him. Like, he's the opposite of the Dark Elf to me. The Dark Elf who was a complete joke that had no power. You knew he was going to be destroyed, and there was no characterization. He shows up, he just wants to do evil things, and he gets stopped.
I wanted to bring reality back to the dark times before
any other like really big surprises or impressive performances that you guys...
I mean, surprises, we could not elaborate too much on it, but...
I didn't mean like surprises as in like cameos or giveaways. I mean like surprise performances or characters that were maybe focused on or not focused on that you were expecting something different from.
I really enjoyed Thor, but I think that comes a little bit from what happened with Thor Ragnarok. Like, there was already adding those dimensions to Thor in Thor Ragnarok, and then in this, like...
Were you surprised that Thor and Iron Man were more the focus than Thor and Captain America, or Iron Man and Captain America like they normally are?
I was a little bit, to be honest.
I don't mind Captain taking a bit more of a backseat. Not that he wasn't prominent.
Yeah. But he wasn't developed. It was more just like, oh, hey, look, Cap brought his friends, and we're going to fight
And that awesome beard.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's half of what he fights with.
I don't mind it because they sort of did that with Civil War. And I think this, because we know there's going to be an Infinity War Part 2, I think this leaves it for the next one to be the one where Iron Man and Captain America are really going to hash it out.
Well,
and be the focus.
I think this isn't a coincidental thing. You know, they needed an event this large to bring them back together after the events of Civil War.
Oh, yeah, there was such a rift between the two.
Yeah, right? Like that. It wasn't going to just be your run-of-the-mill whatever to, you know, oh, now we're good, right? Like, it's going to need to be something monumental.
It actually ties in very well with Civil War. I rewatched it fairly recently, and at the end, you know, you see Steve Rogers, and he's sending an email to Tony Stark, and he basically says, you know, we may not see eye to eye, but if you ever need me, call me, you know?
Was it an email, or did he send a FedEx with that cell phone?
Maybe it was a FedEx. Either way, he sent him a message saying that...
And that was the... In Civil War, that was the...
post-credit scene.
That was the Stan Lee cameo where he was the delivery man.
Yeah, Tony Stank.
Yeah. The exact opposite disappointments in this one.
I didn't like Scarlet Witch's performance that much. I didn't.
Do you mean like the writing or the actual like? Elizabeth Olsen's like actual portrayal?
I don't think it was her fault. Yeah. I think that the writing between her and the Vision. I mean, we already kind of talked about it. It was kind of disappointing. It wasn't really a relationship that you cared about. It kind of made them both seem lame, I guess.
I actually cared about the relationship. I feel more that there were some emotional parts where maybe I didn't feel completely sold by her character's emotion. But anyways, yeah, that was probably my most disappointed one.
Do you guys think that this is a movie that you're able to see without watching all of the lead up? And I mean, you might be able to skip. You might be able to skip, you know, like half of the movies because they're not directly related. Yeah. But the ones that specifically introduce the individual stones and build up to this, it's not one that you can just jump into.
I don't think so. No,
there's enough there that you would really kind of have. Because I mean, you know, if you're not introduced to Wakanda and the Black Panther, you'd be like, "What the hell is this?" Right? If you're not introduced to, let's say, at least Thor Ragnarok and like the talk about the Infinity Stones there, or the first Guardians of the Galaxy, like you're going to be confused. I think there's at least 4 or 5 movies that you have to see to watch this one.
I think that you need to see, obviously, the first 2 Avengers movies. Thor Ragnarok and...
well, I mean, they introduce a stone...
Guardians of the Galaxy.
The first Thor movie has the Tesseract.
Is it the first? Or
the Tesseract...
no, sorry. Well... Okay,
the Tesseract is a bigger deal in the Avengers 1. Though.
They did it in the Avengers 1 because you were introduced to the staff, which Loki had, which, I mean, okay, if you didn't see, let's say, Avengers 2, then you wouldn't know, anyways, where the stone ended up. And the Tesseract, I mean, technically happened in the first Captain America, but it also makes an appearance in, you know, the first Thor movie and things like that, so...
Yeah. Like, I think there are some you could skip, but you definitely need to see at least a couple of them. Otherwise, it wouldn't. It would be like basically starting any type of movie in the middle of a trilogy.
Unfortunately, right? I think you would have to watch Thor 2.
Do you guys feel that with a movie that was intended to be such a large scale, you know, payoff for all of this build-up with such a large ensemble, did you find that what they gave you for combat scenes was acceptable, lower, higher?
There were some that were just phenomenal. I thought the battle on Titan was really good.
Yeah.
I loved that fight. Earth, it was okay. I think there could have been some stuff that would have been better. They just kind of threw aliens at them, right?
Yeah, like... I actually kind of agree with that. I thought that almost all the smaller fights were pretty good, other than the very first one.
Well, the bigger ones require more coordination. Yeah. You don't get lost in the shuffle as much. The large-scale ones, it's like, how fast can the camera pan and catch this character using this ability and this using this ability?
It was sort of like a a cameo of superheroes appearing to do a couple abilities.
I'd almost
right?
venture to say that the combat with Thanos was better than all the other combat.
Yeah.
And it was because of him showing some of his powers, like when he's using the stones to do certain things against people, like that. I really enjoyed that.
I don't know. It felt like, if I'm being honest, it felt like a lot of the times he held back on his capabilities. Even when he only had some stones versus other stones, right? Like, he starts with one stone and just really feels like he could do more, and he's not.
It almost feels like he's not going to kill somebody unless they're directly in front of the stone, or they have the stone.
That's part of the complexity of him, is that his goal isn't to kill
It's
people
to
for the sake of
to balance.
killing people. He wants to kill people to save people, which again adds that dimension. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much more we can get into. Like, this
Without
one is
getting into spoilers.
It's a difficult one to review without watching spoilers. So why don't we just get into scores and recommendations? Because honestly, this is one where people are going to have to see it for themselves.
Yep.
Who's starting?
Alex is starting.
Alex, you're starting.
Okay. I give it a 9 out of 10. I think it was so good. It had a couple flaws, but it kept me interested in the entire time. It had some fantastic action. The special effects were so good that you didn't even notice them. And really, I think they had one of the best villains I've seen yet. And that's, to me, one of the biggest things in the villain. But so many stories don't do them justice.
Honestly, this is going to sound silly, but he's almost on like DC villain level.
Yeah.
Where they always excel in villains more than Marvel, and then the other way around with the heroes, to me. But Thanos definitely fit up there. Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much, I'd say.
So I really like Thanos from the comic books as a villain, and I think they really nailed his multidimensional characterization in this one. I feel that the same thing with all the lessons being learned and the depth of characters for the Avengers themselves was also really well done. There was a couple characters that didn't get a lot of growth, but we already kind of touched on that.
It's impossible to give them all
It's so
growth.
hard when you're dealing with such a big cast.
That's why you have such a large movie library building up to that.
Yeah. And the action, for the most part, was really well done. I agree with the special effects was really well done. I will also go with a 9 out of 10.
Sandro.
7. And here's why. It's not my small gripes, though they are factors. They do lose a little bit of points in what I've discussed about pacing and powerization. The reason that I give it a 7 is because I find it impossible to view it in a vacuum. And so much of what I could consider worthy of a better score is going to come down to what happens in the sequel. For me, this movie really... I almost find it difficulty to give this movie a score. Because there is so many good things. There is so many bad things. Well, okay, a lot less bad things. But if they're not handled properly in the sequel, it's almost like building a house of cards. It will all come tumbling down. If I was to give it a higher score, I would need something that I could definitively say there is no way they can screw this up in the sequel. But I see too many openings for that. And I mean, it's like the highest possible 7 out of 10 I could give, because I would still recommend any fan go see the movie.
Yeah.
But I just cannot get away with the what ifs, the anticipations, the loose ends that they've left for the second movie just don't feel properly placed for me. And it's very difficult to go into that without spoilers as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about once the camera's off. And I'm sure people will tell me I'm wrong many times. But I
think when the second movie comes out, we'll have to look at a cumulative score.
And you know what? It's almost like like the Champions League where we're going to look at an aggregate score between the two legs.
Yeah.
Because I went into the movie wanting it to be higher. I wanted to come out of the movie and be like, 10 out of 10. But I just can't, because one of the biggest issues for me was that it didn't feel like a complete movie. It just felt
it's meant to be that way,
and
right?
I know that,
Yeah.
and I knew that going into it too. And I fully expected that mentality of, okay, well, I'm not expecting a conclusion here because there's going to be a second one, but that can be done well and that can be done poorly. And to me, a lot of it felt fairly ham-fisted for that element. And that's why this is one of those situations where I want to eat crow. I want the sequel to come out and for me to just be like, you know what?
I was wrong. These two together make a great...
I mean, you never know when it's going to go Star Wars Episode 8, right?
But for me, for now, this movie, as much as I try to view it in a vacuum, 7 out of 10.
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. You guys let us know what you think of the movie.
They never do. Nobody's watching.
Gotta ask. Like, comment, subscribe. And tell us why Sandra's wrong and why we're right.
Yeah.
And then we'll see you next time. Live in a real world, play in a pixel one.
Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.